and welcome everyone. Welcome to the Texas Energy Fund outside of ERCOT grant program reporting, a project reporting and disbursement training webinar. We're happy to see you all here. As you may recall, my name is Lucas Martin. I am the outside of ERCOT grant program lead for the Texas Energy Fund administrator, and I'll be facilitating today. Before we get into the agenda, do want to turn it over to my counterpart over at the Public Utility Commission in Yvonne Mendoza. She serves as the outside of ERCOT program lead for a brief introduction as well.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Some of you have already executed your grant agreements, while others are very close to doing so. Regardless of where you are in the process, we want to ensure that everyone has a clear understanding of reporting and disbursement requirements and how to use the TxEF portal. Having consistent and accurate documentation from the beginning helps us maintain compliance, mitigate risk, and ensure the responsible use of taxpayer funds. I'm excited to be here, and I'll give it back to Lucas. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Yvonne. All right, jumping now to the agenda. So a busy day today. We'll start with where we're at in the OEGP post-award process, including the reporting and disbursement cadence. We'll then do a review of the reports and a demonstration of the submission of all four of the reports. We'll then do the same for the disbursement request submission and then the waiver and amendment request process. After that, we'll move into kind of a preview of the next step of the OEGP lifecycle, talking about compliance and monitoring. And then this will allow us to prepare you for the upcoming activities as we move into the post-grant agreement signing. Lastly, we'll go over some of those kind of key resources to keep in mind as we move into this next stage and just the next steps to finish us off coming out of this webinar. With that, we'll move uh, into the OEGP grant life cycle. So again, just to kind of set the stage, we've shared this slide before, so I won't spend too much time on it. But now, as Yvonne mentioned, some of you have executed grant agreements. We are moving into the reporting and disbursement phase, as well as the compliance and monitoring phase. So just want to set the stage that here's where we're at. We've gone through this slide before. Now we're going to spending a little more time talking more tactically about how to interface within the TxEF portal. We'll be doing some demonstrations. You'll see I'll share a couple of actual recordings walking through those different reports and disbursement and annual reports as well. So before we dive in, let's kind of review. I just want to maybe reset the stage a little bit here for some of the cadence as well. So we can move to the next slide. Depending on your assigned group, which I know we've talked about a little bit and has been if you've already executed your grant agreement, is kind of front and center within your grant agreements. You'll have a different period for reporting and disbursement requests. So if you are part of group one, you'll see that your reporting window will start July 1st for your reports, and the window will close July 21st. So you have about 21 days to submit those reports. That's the same. Like I'll say, the window is the same for all of them. It's just a matter in which the month aligns to that window. So the disbursement request submission window is a shorter time period, so 10 days at the beginning of each month. So you can see there for group one starts July 1 through July 10th. Same windows again for the next groups. You can kind of see it always the time period that's covered under those reports is always the previous 3 months. So depending on your group, it'll always be the 3 months prior to your window opening up. So for group one, April 1st through June 30th, you'll come in and submit. For group two, May 1st through July 31st, and then group three, June 1st through August 31st, and so on and so forth. So you can see as the next periods come up, the months in which we are looking to submit, you're looking to report on those different activities that occur within those months. So any questions there, feel free to escalate to your grant manager. Again, they are captured within your grant agreement as well. Alrighty, we will jump in shortly to some of the demonstrations, but before we do, we just want to kind of reset the different reports that we'll be walking through. So there are the performance report, again, noting just that it is capturing performance that has been, I'll say, carried out throughout the performance period. So over the last 3 months, what activities and accomplishments have been accomplished. as well as some of the project milestones, metrics, and outcomes, denoting any risks that have been experienced. For the financial report, it is capturing expenditures that have been incurred across the different categories, again, within the budget documents. Uh, the last two here for the real property report, these are ad hoc reports, so they come up, or sorry, this one is a little more not applicable to everyone. It is an annual report. It is due the end of September and is capturing information related to real property acquired under the grants that we're operating under. Lastly, moving to the significant development report, this is an ad hoc report. It is capturing any significant developments that have been experienced throughout the life of the project. So if any of those are experienced, we'd ask for you to submit a significant development report. This is required under Texas Grants Management Standards, denoting or escalating any of those potential risks or significant developments that impact the performance of the grant. All righty. With that, before we jump into the demonstration, just have a couple of tips that we want to call out as it relates to documents that are being uploaded. I know I mentioned a few of these things on the previous webinar, that documents should be captured as PDFs. So any of invoices, any supporting documentation should be via PDF, and any pictures that are being uploaded into the TxEF portal should be JPEGs. So in addition to not just them being in those formats and those file formats, they should also be legible. If those documents are illegible, we will send them back for you all via RFI for you to upload documents that are legible. We'll ask for you to kind of compare your progress against where you're at, or where the documents in your grant agreement denote what they are, what you're tracking to. So anything that you're populating in the TxEF portal, you should always kind of have your grant agreements and supporting documentation related to your budget and planning documents in front of you, so you kind of get a sense of what was communicated and articulated in the grant agreement and what were the expectations at that time. On the significant development report, I think we've noted this a few different times, is that before you do submit that report, we'd ask for you to reach out to your grant manager for guidance, because that can trigger a couple different activities related to potential amendments or potential waivers or any other alarm bells that may come about if there's a significant development within your project. And also be ready, if you're going to submit that report, that you may be asked to submit updated budgets, updated project planning documents, and so forth. If you receive an RFI, ask that you complete those within 5 days. If that's not if you can't meet that deadline, we'd ask for you to respond and provide information denoting that you can't, and we'll work with you to remediate. All right. With that, let's jump into into the actual recordings here. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the report submission walkthrough video series for the Texas Energy Fund's Outside of ERCOT grant program. In this video, we'll walk through the end-to-end process to submit a quarterly performance report in the Texas Energy Fund portal, also referred to as the TxEF portal. We will, 1, review the task assignment email, 2, detail how to navigate the TxEF portal, and 3, submit a quarterly performance report. Let's get started. When the quarterly performance report is available to be requested in the TxEF portal, you will receive this email. It will inform you that a new task has been assigned to you and that you should log into the portal, locate the task, and complete it before the due date. Now we'll shift over to the TxEF portal. As you can see, I've already logged in. If I hadn't logged in, you would see a login icon in the top right corner. And upon clicking that, you would be able to enter your email and password. Since I've done that, I will now shift over to the My Dashboard section, where if I scroll down, you can see the OEGP Quarterly Performance Report section. And we'll go to the award form. As you can kind of see, I have populated some information in here, but definitely not all. And to orient you here, there are a couple different progress bars. You can see on the top section here is a light blue progress bar denoting how far in the process I am, as well as a couple different smaller bubbles indicating uh, how much progress I've made within each individual section, as well as some asterisks denoting required sections and required fields that need to be populated in order to submit the report. Once I've completed these sections, they will populate with a green bubble and a white check mark. Now that you understand the form itself, I will pivot back to the introduction section. The introduction page details the sections of the report as well as provides some resources in case you need guidance while completing the form. Once you've reviewed, click on the next page section, and now we'll start populating the project details. Before you begin, we'd like to suggest that you have your grant agreement and budget and planning templates on hand for easy reference. I'm going to go through and populate this with some test information, again, denoting these are all required fields. However, you can find this information within your budget template. As we get down to the period covered by this report, this includes the year as well as the reporting period. So we are in the first reporting period, which will always be the 3 previous months that you will be reporting on. Next, you'll see an overall percent status of completion. This is a field that you populate with your kind of understanding of completion of the total project. So we'll say 10% for now. As we get through this information, we would ask for you as you're populating it to always kind of come down here if you need to and save as draft when appropriate. That way you don't lose progress and you can see that some progress has been made within the bubble. Now we'll shift down to the activities and milestones sections. This information is pulled from your project planning documents. So one, I'd like for you to check for accuracy as you're completing based on the project planning documents you've populated, but we'll go through and we'll put in some percentages and some test narrative. In the test narrative, we'd like for you to capture any narrative describing why you're at the percentage you're at, whether you're tracking ahead or behind. Milestone section as well is populated from your project planning document that have been memorialized within your grant agreement. Again, we'll put in some percentages here. In populating this in actuality, we'd ask for you to provide some precise percentage completions as well as some good narrative that we'd like to make sure captures the essence of where you're at in the project. Just populating this for use now. And you can see within each individual window of this information, there is a save as you go feature as well. Lastly, for the performance metrics, you can see some of these are quarterly based and some of them are end of project. Ask for you, if they're end of project, you can always just put in NA, or if they're not in the current period, feel free to put NA. So NA or not applicable. And we'll save those changes as well. Next, we'll pivot to the narrative section. This is where free text section where you'll capture kind of any what was denoting anything that was completed and during this period. You could say procured a vendor. In providing this actual information, we'd ask for you to be a little more detailed than I am in populating now, but please provide some descriptive information. For the next period, we could say vendor to install poles. Again, ask for you to be a little more descriptive in populating in real when you're actually completing. Lastly, you can see risks identified. Again, capturing any risks that have been identified throughout the period of performance. If there are previous historical risks, ask for you to also just kind of capture those and say they're still being experienced and anything that might be experienced there. So right now we're going to put NA and then capturing any mitigation steps that are being taken. You'll see here if there's any key personnel changes, asking for you to capture those in this free text section. any scope changes or scope issues, capturing those, any schedule issues, any project status information here. Again, we're just going to put NA just to for ease of populating. And then you'll see a section here capturing an upload a file section. And here I'd like to spend just a few seconds talking about the unique naming convention that we like for you all to use in populating this information. So here you can see that we do ask you to use a naming convention, follows this format, using AWD to denote that it is an award document, the application number, again, captured in your grant agreement, as well as within the TxEF portal. The report code, you can see that there is a specific report code that we've created for the quarterly performance reports. We'd ask for you to use that. So it's PERFREP, as well as a file name that you use. It could be field report. It could be anything that is capturing the essence of the file. Lastly, you'll see the month, date, and year using that format. So you can see an example of that report or of that naming convention here below. With that, we will shift back to the TxEF portal. And you can see I'm still on this page. I am going to save as draft. I'm apparently missing one section. Let's see where we're at here. Okay. That's right here. And then we'll save this one as draft. All right, you can see there's a green bubble with a white check mark. Next, we'll move to the attestation section. This is just that, a section attesting that the information is true and correct. So you'll click the box here. We will put in today's date. And we'll put John Doe. So that is my name. We'll save this as draft. Upon saving as draft, you can see the attestation section is completed. And now the submission bubble has turned blue with the ability to submit the report. Once you click submit, you will no longer be able to edit the report. Therefore, you will need to change. You won't be able to change anything, or but if needed, you can reach out to the OEGP at txenergyfund.texas.gov to reach out to the TxEF administrator for guidance or contact your grant manager. Once you've successfully submitted the quarterly performance report, a submission confirmation message will appear that completes the end-to-end process for submitting a quarterly performance report in the TxEF portal. You may receive follow-up requests for additional substantiation from the TxEF administrator in the form of an RFI. The performance report user guide also contains additional information on the process for submitting the report. Thank you so much for watching. Welcome to the report submission walkthroughs video series for the Texas Energy Fund's outside of ERCOT grant program. In this video, we'll walk through the end-to-end process to submit a quarterly financial report in the Texas Energy Fund portal, also referred to as the TxEF portal. We will 1. Review the task assignment email, 2. Detail how to navigate the TxEF portal, and 3. Submit a quarterly financial report. Let's get started. When the quarterly financial report is available to be requested in the TxEF portal, you will receive this email. It'll inform you that a new task has been assigned to you and that you should log into the portal, locate the task, and complete it before the due date. We will now shift over to the TxEF portal, where you will see that I have already logged in. If I hadn't already logged in, you will see a login indicator up in the top right corner with the ability to enter my email and password and hit login. After logging in, I'll now navigate to the My Dashboard portion of the screen. And I will scroll down and click on the OEGP Quarterly Financial Report and click on Go to Award Form. Once inside the report form, there are a few details that are important to note. First, there are red asterisks indicating a required question or file upload. The form cannot be submitted if the fields are blank. Next, to the progress bar in the top left corner. There's information icon that offers more information about certain questions that need to be answered in order to submit the form. As you complete the sections of the report, these circles here will fill with blue as you make progress to show how much you have completed and how much you have left. Once you have completed a section of the form, a green checkbox will replace the green progress bar or progress circle to indicate that the section is finished. Now that you understand the form itself, you'll see that we're currently on the introduction section. The introduction page details the sections of the report as well as provides some resources in case you need guidance while completing the form. Before we begin, we'd like to suggest that you have your grant agreement and budget planning templates on hand for easy reference. First, you'll fill out the financial year as well as the reporting period that you're reporting for. So be sure to click on the appropriate period. Once you complete that, you'll save and click on next page. You can see that I had already uploaded or I had already completed those fields. In the quarterly financial report section, the first thing you'll see is the budget reporting table. The budget reporting table will be auto-populated with information from your budget documents, except for, as you can see here, the current period reimbursement request. Be sure to scroll all the way to the right and fill out the fields, as well as any of the fields that need to be addressed or updated. Make sure you populate those as well. Once you've completed the table, there is an Upload a File button. This is where you will upload any documentation and support for your budget information. It is not expected that you will have files to upload here, but if you have any additional documentation that supports large variances between budget amounts and amounts requested for reimbursement, like a justification narrative or a letter from a vendor or contractor explaining delays, then this is where you will upload all that information. To submit any documentation, you'll click Upload a File, and then either click Upload Files to browse your files library or drag and drop them into the box. When a file is finished uploading, click Done and repeat the process to upload more files. It is important to note that there is a specific file naming convention to be followed when uploading a file to the report, and we'll touch on that later. Next, you'll see the narrative and budget issues sections. In narrative, describe any variances to the budget. In the budget issues, describe changes that may have a notable impact on expenditures or the overall budget. If there are no variances or issues, you can input NA or not applicable. Next, you'll see the updated forecast section. You'll see the budget categories from the previous table. However, it is not auto-populated, and you'll be responsible for inputting the amount for the next period's forecasted expenses and cost share. You'll also have an opportunity to upload a supporting documentation, which in this case may be something forward-looking, like quotes, unpaid invoices, purchase orders, amended contracts related to future expenditures. You'll also have an opportunity to upload all those documents. We'll now move on to discuss the appropriate file naming convention, as previously indicated. The naming convention follows this format: AWD, which stands for award, dash, followed by your assigned application number, which you can locate in your grant agreement. Then underscore, followed by a report code, which is FINREP for quarterly financial report. Then underscore the file name, underscore, followed by the date of the upload. The date should be in the format indicated on the screen, mm.dd.yyyy. Here is an example of the naming convention on the bottom of the screen. Let's now move on to the last part of the form, the attestation section. I'll shift back over the portal. As you can see, all of the previous screens have been completed. For the attestation section, first you'll click on the box verifying that information you have filled in is true and correct as the date of submission. Next, we'll put in today's date. We'll put in John Doe, and we'll save as draft. If you'd like, you can click on the previous page to return to previous sections and review for accuracy. When you're ready, once all the form sections are complete, the blue button for submit is now available to you, and you can click submit. You'll no longer be able to edit the report after you submit it. Therefore, if you need to change anything or have any questions related to email, please email OEGP at txenergyfund.texas.gov to reach out to the TxEF administrator for guidance. Once you successfully submitted the financial report, a submission confirmation message will appear. That completes the end-to-end process for submitting a financial report via the TxEF portal. You'll receive follow-up requests for additional substantiation from the TxEF administrator in the form of an RFI. The financial report user guide also contains additional information on the process for submitting the request via the TxEF portal. Thank you for watching. Welcome to the report submission walkthroughs video series for the Texas Energy Fund's Outside of ERCOT grant program. In this video, we'll walk through the end-to-end process to submit an annual real property report in the Texas Energy Fund portal, also referred to as the TxEF portal. We will 1, review the submission reminder email, 2, detail how to navigate the TxEF portal, and 3, submit an annual real property report. Let's get started. When it's time to fill out the annual real property report within the TxEF portal, you will receive this email. It will inform you that you should log into the portal, request the report, and complete it before the due date. The annual real property report will be due on September 30th of each year, with the submission window opening on September 1st. With that, we will navigate to the TxEF portal. You'll note that I have already logged into the portal. If I hadn't already logged in, you would see a login on the top right corner. You would provide your email and password and log in. With that, we will shift to the My Dashboard. In here, you will go to the awards section, and you'll click on the award link. Scroll down to the request section, and you'll see that I've already started a real property report. Once inside the report, you can see I've already started completing and have completed nearly all the information. But if I go to the real property report section, you will note that there are a handful or most of the information here is required to be submitted in order to be completed in order to be submitted. Next, you'll note as well, this section is technically a progress bar in the top left corner. And here you will also note the fields that need to be completed. So you can see the required as well as total fields as well. As you complete the information within this page, these bubbles will populate with blue color, and then once completed, they will indicate that they are complete with a green check. Now that you're familiar with the various pages and functionality, we'll shift back to the introduction section. The introduction page details the sections of the report, as well as provides some resources in case you need guidance while completing the form. Once you've reviewed this information, you will click on next page. Again, as indicated, I have provided or populated a lot of this information, but I will walk through what types of information is needed. Before we do it, we would like to suggest that you have your grant agreement and budget and planning templates on hand for easy reference. First, you'll enter your project name, your project number. This will be the number assigned to you by the TxEF administrator and can be found in your grant agreement. Then type in the object, subcategory, project description, and the location of the project, all captured in the grant agreement. At this point, go ahead and scroll to the bottom. And as we'd like to do throughout the completion of various reports, there would be a section here that denotes that we need to save it. So I'll just update one section here and I will save as draft. There you can see after doing that, it actually moved me back in progress. After I've completed the necessary information related to the project, high-level information, we'll now move into the real property section. This provides a description of the real property, then the address of the real property, followed by the property's land acreage or square units. Then next, you'll see a drop down indicating the type of ownership that you've entered into for the real property. I'll ask for you to capture the real property cost, the associated state share, as well as the non-state share. This may align somewhat to your cost share, but may be different. We'd ask for you to reach out to your grant manager for assistance potentially in completing this portion if you have any questions. Additionally, has a deed, lien, or covenant or other related documentation been provided to establish the state interest in the property? If yes, provide describe the instrument that has been entered into or has been provided. Has insurance coverage been secured for this real property? Has significant change occurred to the real property? So this information, kind of moving into this next stage, you'll see is more related to the next iteration, maybe not necessarily the first iteration, but if there are a couple different iterations of this real property report capturing any significant changes related to the real property. So may not be relevant in the first submission, but may also be relevant. Again, I just updated this to earlier, so I'll capture just a $0 here, and then any additional comments. Add any additional related real property. You can see here that there would be another section if there's additional real property that has been acquired during the period of performance, that you'll capture that here. And then again, if there's another real property as well. I'm going to say no here. You'll also note that there is a section related to supporting documentation, so you can upload supporting documentation. At this stage, I'll flip back over to spend a little bit of time talking about the naming convention that you see there on the screen. The naming convention follows this format, so AWD, and then the application number format, as referenced earlier, the report code. So the report code for the annual real property report you can see here is REAL PROP for real property. I asked for you to include that in the files, file naming, and the file name. So it could be blueprint as indicated here, it could be specs, could be something else, but ask for you to include that there, as well as the month, date, and year. You can see below we have a reference as well. Let's now move on to the attestation portion. We will save as draft, noting that we did have a complete submission here, so now we'll move to the attestation. As indicated earlier, I have already gone through and populated it. However, I did so a couple days ago, so I will now have to redo it, and we will put in today's date, actually technically tomorrow's date, and then put in the individual's name that's submitting. We will save as draft. After saving as draft, you'll note that now the blue submission button is now available to me. Once you click submit, you will no longer be able to edit the form. Therefore, you will need to change if you need to change anything, or if you have any questions, please email the OEGP at txenergyfund.texas.gov to reach out to the Texas Energy Fund Administrator for guidance, or contact your grant manager. Once you have successfully submitted the annual real property report, the submission confirmation message will appear. That completes the end-to-end process. Please note that please note the TxEF administrator require more additional information. You may receive follow-up requests in the form of a request from an RFI. So please note that those might come. For additional guidance on how to submit an annual real property report, please reference the annual real property report user guide, which contains step-by-step instructions and screenshots illustrating how to submit an annual real property report within the TxEF portal, which you can locate on the OEGP page of the Texas Energy Fund online. Thank you for watching. Welcome to the report submission walkthrough video series for the Texas Energy Fund's Outside of ERCOT grant program. In this video, we'll walk through the end-to-end process to submit a significant development report in the Texas Energy Fund portal, also referred to as the TxEF portal. We will 1. Detail how to navigate the TxEF portal, 2. Request the significant development report form, and 3. Submit the significant development report form. Let's get started. Shift over to the portal. In here, you will note I have already logged in. If I hadn't already logged in, you would see a login button here in the top right section. I would enter my email and my password and click login. Upon doing that, I would click on my dashboard. Then scroll down to awards, click on my award, and then scroll down to new requests. And here I would click on significant development report. I would create. You'll note I have already created a few different reports. So I will go here and click on the one that I just created. Once inside the report form, there are a few details that are important to note. First, there are red asterisks indicating required fields and sections. The form cannot be submitted if the fields are blank. Next, to the progress bar on the top left corner. This indicates just how far I've progressed in completing the form. You can also hover over the icon to indicate the fields that have been completed, both required and total. As you complete the sections of the report, these circles here will fill with blue as you make progress to show how much you have completed and how much you have left. Once you have completed a section of the form, a green checkbox will replace the blue progress circle to indicate that the section is finished. Now that you understand the form itself, you'll see that we are currently, we'll pivot back to the introduction section. The introduction page details the sections of the report as well as provides some resources in case you need them for guidance while completing the form. Once you have reviewed, click on Next Page to move to the Significant Development Report section. In the Significant Development Report section, first, click the Type field and select what kind of significant development report from the pick list. You can choose from events that enable meeting milestones and objectives sooner or at less cost than anticipated, or problems, delays, or adverse conditions. I will click on this one. Then I will type the description of the event as well as the impact of the project timeline. NA right now is to populate. After you've clicked on the problems, delays, or adverse conditions development type, you'll be required to fill in the grantee plan for corrective action field. Here you should detail your corrective action plan following a significant development. For ease of populating, I will just put NA, even though these will all be applicable upon completing them. Next, in the field labeled Assistance Needed to Resolve the Situation, this should be a description of any help needed from the TxEF administrator or the PUCT to resolve the issue and get back on track with the project. Once you've completed the required fields, there is an Upload File button. This is where you will upload any documentation that supports the information you provided on the development and mitigation plan. To submit the documentation, click on File, Upload a File, and then either click Upload Files or browse your file library, or drag and drop files into the box. When your file is finished uploading, click Done, and repeat the process to upload more files. When you're ready to click on Next Page, move to the attestation section. It is important to note that there is a specific file naming convention to be followed when uploading documentation. We'll save this report now, and we will go and discuss the file naming convention. The file naming convention follows this format: AWD, which stands for award, dash, followed by your assigned application number, which you can locate in your grant agreement, then underscore, followed by a report code, which is SIGDEV for the significant development report, then underscore the file name, underscore, followed by the date of upload. The date should be in the format indicated on the screen, which is mm.dd.yyyy. Here is an example of the naming convention you'll use to upload a file to the significant development report in the TxEF portal at the bottom of the screen. Now let's move to the last window, which is the attestation section. For the attestation section, first you'll check the box verifying that the information you just filled in is true and correct as of the date of the submission. Then you'll click on the calendar icon to select the date you are submitting the form. We'll put date, and now we'll put in a name, the person submitting the form. And we'll save as draft to save your work. If you'd like, you can click on the previous page to return to review the previous sections for accuracy. When you're ready, once both form sections are complete, click Submit to finalize the report. Once you click Submit, you will no longer be able to edit the report. Therefore, if you need to change anything or if you have any questions, please email OEGP at txenergyfund.texas.gov to reach out to the TxEF administrator for guidance or to contact your grant manager. Once you successfully submit the significant development report, a submission confirmation message will appear. You will also receive an email confirming your submission. That completes the end-to-end process for submitting a significant development report via the TxEF portal. You may receive follow-up requests for additional substantiation from the TxEF administrator in the form of an RFI. The Significant Development Report User Guide also contains additional information in the process for submitting the request via the TxEF portal. Thank you for watching.
So I know we talked a little bit about this on the last the last webinar as well. So just to denote the timeframes related to the submission process. So it must be submitted. The quarterly reports must be submitted no later than 21 days after the beginning of the reporting period. We will then review those. If an RFI will be sent within 21 days of submission. So if you submit it on the first day, kudos, great to you. We will take the time to review and provide an RFI if needed within 21 days of submitting it, and we'll ask for you all to respond within 5 days. We will then facilitate the final review with the PUCT team and recommend approval of the reports. Alrighty. Hopefully the next session here or next portion of the agenda goes a little more seamlessly. I apologize for the technical difficulties, but now we'll transition to the submitting of the disbursement requests in the TxEF portal. So I know briefly walked through this slide last time as well. So as this is mostly a reimbursement program, we have completed all of the budgets for those that have executed their grant agreements. However, there are a few that we still have execution in the hopefully near future. But before costs can be submitted for reimbursement, they obviously need to be incurred and they need to be paid. And then you can submit your disbursement request. So denoting that here in the red box, and then we will review those disbursement requests, and then you will receive a payment upon approval of those disbursement requests. So have a couple different items on the bottom there, just a different checklist of the itemized
list of expenses incurred, all of the supporting documentation we will look to be capturing in the portal, and we'll spend a little time walking through that. So just a couple of things there. If there's any errors, and we'll talk a little bit about the review at the last slide, is that we will be sending those back via RFI, and those will then delay payment overall. Alrighty, moving on to kind of tips and tricks. So similar to the last tips and tricks kind of slide, all documents should be legible, submitted in the correct file format, that being broadly PDF, and then the file names should reflect the existing names of the budget documents. So kind of we'll walk through some of the naming convention as well, that we want to make sure we know what we're looking at and why. And then you should kind of always, I think, when populating any of the reports, but specifically on the disbursement requests, you should have your budget documents and grant agreements kind of in front of you, so you know or have a sense of kind of what you said you'd be requesting at this point in time, and how does this request jive with kind of that timeline and incurred expenditures. As always, speak with your grant manager if there's any impacts to your timeline or project overall, or if you need to submit a significant development report that may impact whether you submit your disbursement request. If there's been a significant development experienced and it impacts your ability to submit a disbursement request, speak with your grant manager and communicate that there is an issue that's been experienced, and we'll work with you in submitting your significant development report. Lastly, again, kind of noting that if there's any RFIs, we'll delay potential disbursements that come out or that go out, and the timeline related to those. Welcome to the request submission walkthrough video series for the Texas Energy Fund's Outside of ERCOT grant program. In this video, we'll walk through the end-to-end process to submit a disbursement request in the Texas Energy Fund portal, also referred to as the TxEF portal. We will, 1, detail how to navigate the TxEF portal and request the disbursement request form. We will, 2, submit a disbursement request. Let's get started. Now we will pivot over to the TxEF portal. You'll notice that I have already logged in. If I hadn't already logged in, you would see login in the top right corner here. I would enter my email and my password and hit login. Now, after that, we will shift over to the My Dashboard section. Then we'll scroll down to the Awards section and click on the award table. We will hit New Request. And we will submit a disbursement request. We'll create that. We will then open up the request form. Once inside the request form, there are a few details that are important to note. First, there are red asterisks indicating required questions and fields that need to be populated in order for you to submit the report. Next, you'll notice the progress bar on the top left corner indicating how much information has been completed and how much you have left. If I hover over the icon here, you can see how many required questions I have completed and how many I have left, as well as total fields and how many I have left as well. As you complete the sections of the request, these circles here next to disbursement and attestation will fill with blue as you make progress on how much you have completed and how much you have left. Once you have completed a section of the form, a green checkbox will replace the blue progress circle to indicate that the section is finished. Now that you understand the form itself, let's pivot back to the introduction section. In the introduction page details the sections of the request, as well as provides some resources in case you need guidance while completing the form. Once you have reviewed, click Next Page to move on to the disbursement request details section. Before we begin, we'd like to suggest that you have your grant agreement and budget and planning templates on hand for easy reference. In the disbursement request grant details section, first click on the basis of request pick list. Select either cash or accrual. This one we will hit cash. Then review the reporting and disbursement request cadence information, making sure you note your group assignment communicated to you by the TxEF administrator and identify the reporting period you are in. Next, select your group number and period and type in the year. Group 1, period 1, we'll do 2026. Upon doing that, you will note that all of the information then auto-populated. We will save as draft at this stage. Within the budget details table, you'll note that it did auto-populate, so you don't have to do any of the editing in this section. Should you note something is incorrect in the auto-populated table, please notify your grant manager. In the next subsection, expenditure details, there are tables that will also auto-populate with information from your planning and budget templates. If requesting reimbursement for the budget line items that were not originally budgeted for reimbursement in the current reporting period, you can add rows to input additional expenditures. If you add rows, be sure to click Save Changes after each row. We recommend you scroll down and click on Save as Draft before you start the next table. There are also upload a file spaces under each of the tables where you can upload applicable supporting documentation for each cost category. To submit the documentation, you'll click on Upload a File and click Upload Files to browse your file library or drag and drop files into the box. When your file is finished uploading, click Done and repeat the process to upload more files or save as draft. It is important to note that there are specific file naming conventions to be followed when uploading a file to the request. We'll return to this in a minute. The last item to complete in this section is the checkbox at the bottom, which verifies that you understand that all of the information you are providing is true and accurate, as well as you indicate that the PUCT may request additional information to process this reimbursement request. Now let's go over the file naming convention. And I will pivot back. Screen. The naming convention follows this format. AWD, which stands for award, dash followed by your assigned application number, which you can locate in your grant agreement, then underscore followed by a request code, which is DISREQ for disbursement request, then underscore the cost category, which can also be found on the first cell of each row of each expenditure table. Cost category codes are RP for real property, SUP for supplies, EQ for equipment, SW for software, SE for salaried employees, HE for hourly employees, and CON for contractors. Then another underscore the unique identify number, which is the line number the file corresponds to, underscore the file name, underscore the date of upload. The date should follow the format indicated on the screen, which is mm.dd.yyyy. If a file supports or corresponds to more than one row of the table and the rows are consecutive, place a dash between them like in example 1. If the rows are non-consecutive, place periods between them, like in example 2. Here is an example of the naming convention you'll use to upload a file to the disbursement request in the TxEF portal. Let's now move back to the form and specifically the attestation section. For the attestation section, first, you'll check the box verifying that the information you just filled is true and correct as the date of submission. You'll enter today's date. I'll actually do tomorrow's date. And I will do John Doe. I will save as draft. If I had completed all the information in the disbursement request, all of the fields there would be populated and so forth, and then the submit button would be available to me. For ease of walking through this demo, I did not, but let's pretend that I had and that I can click on the submit button. Once you click submit, you will no longer be able to edit the request. Therefore, if you need to change anything, or if you have any questions, you'll have to email the OEGP at txenergyfund.texas.gov to reach out to the TxEF administrator for guidance, or contact your grant manager. Once you successfully submit a disbursement request, a submission confirmation message will appear. You will also receive an email confirming your submission. That completes the end-to-end process for submitting a disbursement request via the TxEF portal. You may receive follow-up requests for additional substantiation from the TxEF administrator in the form of an RFI. The disbursement request user guide also contains additional information on the process for submitting the request via the TxEF portal. Thank you for watching. Again, similar slide to what we provided earlier, denoting just the cadence that you have 10 days to submit the document or the disbursement request. We have 21 days to review and provide an RFI, and then funds will be out the door within 30 days of that completed disbursement request. Do want to make sure that we note here that it is a completed disbursement request. If there's an RFI that has to go out, and that you need to respond to, that would be kind of an incomplete request until you respond to that RFI. So that timeline could shift into the next month if costs are if documents are not fully provided and legible. Alrighty, last kind of section here for the demonstration portion anyway. We've provided this slide previously. This just denotes the distinction between waivers and amendments. Waivers is a suspension of a specific requirement for a defined period. So if you're unable to meet the timelines that we've noted on the 21 days for financial or performance reports, this would be a waive of that requirement, but also need to provide substantiation or justification for that waiving. The next one is the amendment. So if there's significant delays in timelines, if you're looking to procure polls next month and you're actually not going to be able to get them until next year, that's obviously a significant development. So we'd ask for you to, one, to submit a significant development, and then two, if needed, we would ask you to submit a waiver. So we have kind of that process on the top right here that kind of denotes that if any of these things are noted before you submit a waiver, an amendment, before you submit a significant development report, we would ask for you to reach out to your grant manager and kind of get some next steps from them. And then we'll guide you through kind of whether a waiver, an amendment, significant development report, or what have you is required. It is incumbent on all of the grantees that you must notify us of any of these missed deadlines. It's incumbent on you to notify us before it's too late and you miss a deadline. But we will work with you if deadlines are missed to try to remediate or come up with the next steps. So with that, I believe we'll now do one more screen share. We've had good luck on the last few. So I'll pull up the waiver and amendment video. Welcome to the request submission walkthrough video series for the Texas Energy Fund's Outside of ERCOT grant program. In this video, we'll walk through the end-to-end process to submit an amendment or waiver consideration request in the Texas Energy Fund portal, also referred to as the TxEF portal. We will, one, detail how to navigate the TxEF portal and request the amendment or waiver consideration request form, and two, submit an amendment or waiver consideration request. Let's get started. Now we will shift over to the portal. And as you'll see as I'm pulling it up, I have already logged in. If I hadn't already logged in, there would be a login button up here in the top right corner where I can enter my email and password information and hit login. After doing that, I will navigate and click on the My Dashboard and then scroll down to Awards and click on the award within the award table. Next, I'll scroll down to a New Request, and I'll click on Amendment or Waiver Consideration Request. I will create this. You'll note that I have created a few different requests. I will click on the most recent one that I just created. This will populate in the request table and you click on it. Once inside the request form, there are a few more details that are important to note. First, there are red asterisks that indicate required questions or fields and files that need to be uploaded. The form cannot be submitted if these fields are blank. Next to the progress bar in the top left corner, there's an information icon that offers additional user guidance. You can hover over that icon for more information. As you complete the sections of the request, these circles here will fill with blue as you make progress to show how much you have completed and how much you have left. Once you have completed a section of the form, a green checkbox will replace the blue progress circle to indicate that the section is finished. Now that you understand the form itself, we will toggle back to the introduction section. The introduction page details the sections of the request as well as provides some resources in case you need guidance while completing the form. Once you have completed, click on Next Page to move to the Amendment or Waiver Consideration Request Details section. In the Amendment or Waiver Consideration Request Details section, click on Select one request type and pick list and choose Waiver, Amendment, or Other. Please do not click on Other unless you have specifically been instructed to by your grant manager. For guidance on which request type may be applicable, speak to your grant manager before filling out the form. Next, move to the four sections of the form indicating nature of the request, basis and justification, impact assessment, and implementation or corrective action. In the nature of request section, you'll provide a clear and specific description of your request. Select all applicable requested actions from the pick list. Click on the calendar icon to identify the date of the issue or need was first identified, and select if the request was submitted before the applicable deadline, milestone, or compliance issue occurred. Once completed, scroll down and click on Save as Draft. Populate here. Test. We'll put in tomorrow's date, and we will put now we'll scroll down and click on Save as Draft, just to not lose our information that's been populated. We'll also just click on Amendment. In the impact assessment screen, you'll select and describe the effect of the request for all applicable impacts. Potential impacts include scope, schedule, including number of days added or reduced if applicable, budget, including dollar amount increase or decrease if applicable, activity, milestone, or metric, and compliance and risk impact. Once completed, scroll down and click on Save as Draft. You can see that none of these sections are required. However, if you're planning to submit, please do so. Please populate. And we'll hit Save as Draft. The last section is the implementation and corrective action section. You'll describe your implementation steps, the start and completion dates, the risks, and mitigation actions. Once completed, scroll down and click on Save as Draft. We'll put test, today's date, tomorrow's date, put tomorrow's date here, put test. We'll hit Save as Draft. Once you've completed the subsections, there is a supporting documentation checklist, which includes a pick list and an upload file button. See that information here. This is where you'll select the documents you would like to upload and then upload the documentation relevant to your request. As a reminder, be sure to fill out all required sections before submitting the supporting documentation. To submit that document, you'll click on Upload a File, and then either click Upload Files to browse your file library or drag and drop files into the box. Once your file is finished uploading, click on Done, and repeat the process to upload more files or click Save as Draft again. It is important to note that there are specific file naming conventions to follow when uploading a file to this request, and we'll touch on those now. The naming convention follows this format: AWD, which stands for award, dash, followed by your assigned application number, which you can locate in your grant agreement. Then underscore, followed by a request code, which is WAIB for waivers and AMEND for amendments. Then underscore, the file name, underscore, followed by the date of the upload. The date should be in the format indicated on the screen, which is mm.dd.yyyy. Here is an example of the naming convention you'll use to upload a file to be an amendment or a waiver consideration request in the TxEF portal. You can see here is one for a waiver. Let's now move back to the portal and let's go to the grantee certification section. For the grantee certification section, you'll type in your name as the authorized representative, your title, general manager, again, your name as your signature, and the date of execution. And it'll save as draft. If you'd like, you can go back to any of the previous screens to flip through in previous sections to review for completeness and accuracy. And then you'll see that the submit button is now available to me. When you're ready, click submit to finalize the request. Once you click submit, you will no longer be able to edit the request. Therefore, you will not be able to change anything. But if you have any questions, please email OEGP at txenergyfund.texas.gov to reach out to the TxEF administrator for guidance or contact your grant manager. Once you successfully submit the amendment or waiver consideration request, a submission confirmation email message will appear, as well as an email confirming your submission. That completes the end-to-end process for submitting an amendment or waiver consideration request via the TxEF portal. You may receive follow-up requests for additional substantiation from the TxEF administrator in the form of an RFI. The amendment or a waiver consideration request user guide also contains additional information on the process for submitting the request via the TxEF portal. Thanks for watching. Quickly pivot back to the slide deck, understanding we got just a few minutes here. So I just want to, as we alluded to, want to spend a little bit of time talking about the compliance and monitoring steps to be expected and set some expectations there. So as alluded to in your grant agreement and elsewhere, there is a risk assessment that is part of this project where upon completion of the risk assessment, we'll kind of better tailor our kind of response and ability to assist in technical assistance to you all. So the inputs here, there's no question here, no other information that we're looking to gather. There's just a couple different inputs that we'll be gathering here for use in assessing the risk related to you all as grantees as well as your projects. So the different reports that we just walked through, as well as site inspections that we'll talk about in the next couple of slides, and any other audits or types of documentation that we're able to find. Again, this will guide kind of the assistance that we provide you and expectations as well. You can see here on the bottom some indicators that are risk indicators that will kind of trigger or heighten the risk. So if you're missing deadlines, if you're providing incomplete information, any audit findings or question costs, a significant turnover in key personnel, those things will heighten the risk associated with you as a grantee and your projects as well. All right, moving on to the next slide here. As a component and kind of a multi-faceted approach here, we also intend to perform desk reviews. So desk review is essentially just us walking through and discussing internal controls, processes, and gathering supporting documentation with you all. So it's unlike a site visit where it's more of the administrative side. and kind of providing or discussing kind of an interview section or interview process to identify that most or all of what you're saying you're doing on paper and what you're doing providing in the reports is how it's working in real life. So before we execute those, we'll give you a heads up. So a month out, we'll provide kind of an indication that we'll be doing those. And then after those, we'll be writing kind of a compliance letter of kind of where do you stand after following that desk review. So a number of different deliverables here, and we'll look to follow up with those. Lastly, as I mentioned, site inspections is kind of the third leg of the stool here as we transition to that slide. That site inspections are part of the program as well. So one inspection per year per site. Some of them may be virtual in nature, others will be actually on site, but there will be an on-site component of the site inspections. So we will ask you all to provide access to us when we request it. We will make sure that we give a proper notification when those site inspections are set to occur. And we'll walk through expectations when we're on site, where we'd like to see a lot of the materials and so forth that have been procured and where they've been installed, if applicable. All right, I breezed through those slides, but I, as always, want to touch a little bit on some of the resources here. So post-selection award program manual will be available to you. This webinar, the training videos that I kind of breezed through initially, those will be in a more full format be provided to you all, as well as the user guides that kind of walk through each of those reports more intimately and have kind of screenshots of where that information can be found and how to click through different things as well. As I know I breezed through a couple of those and had the speed turned up a little bit for ease of getting through them today. Lastly, next steps. So as indicated earlier, some of you have signed your grant agreements, others still have to sign your grant agreements. So if you haven't already, we will look to have you in Austin to do those. Always feel free to review all of the available resources on TxEF online, as well as reaching out to your grant manager if you have questions. Then organize all of your documents. So make sure you're maintaining all the supporting documentation, invoices, and so forth. Sometimes I throw out receipts. Obviously, since this is a grant program, we look for you to retain any receipts and everything in compliance with the records retention policy. And then we will be standing up a periodic period of performance check-ins, initially on a monthly basis following execution of the grant agreements, and then on a more quarterly basis once you get your feet underneath you. We ask for you all to be in attendance in those. And then last but not least is the big thing: execute your projects, and then prepare to report on the progress of those projects. So we look forward to seeing the progress, or monitoring the progress, and monitoring compliance overall, and look forward to working with you in this next stage. Thank you all I think we got there right at 2 minutes over, so I apologize for the technical difficulties, but glad we made it through it, and I appreciate everyone's attendance on this Thursday now afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your day.